Parannoul is a South Korean musician that works in the shoegaze genre, and I've listened to his stuff before. I've been mildly impressed with what he was doing a few years back, but I wasn't really taken away. I wasn't really swept off my feet with what he was doing. And this is the third album that he's put out as a solo in a solo capacity. And After the Magic is his best one yet. Woo! This is a fantastic shoegaze album that feels joyous, that feels magical at times, that feels really, really earnest as well. This is fantastic, and it not only is just in the shoegaze sound, but it also is an album that kind of delves into some like indie rock isms that feel very 90s-esque at times. Some really, really powerful drumming moments that come through as well. Of course, it's really indebted to shoegaze as a whole, and honestly, I mean, thinking back to my year-end lists, this might be one of the best shoegaze albums of the past like 3-4 years. I'm trying to think of like really big standout shoegaze albums that I've absolutely loved, and I'm going to go as far as saying that this is one of the best I've heard in quite some time. Polaris, like I say, with some of the indie rock isms, comes through like an indie rock tune with the oohs that come through as well. Just make it sound like something you'd expect from like, I don't know, a band like Pavement or something, or freaking like Archers of Loaf or something like that. Just that kind of like twee indie rock sound that you hear from the 90s bands that, you know, your slacker friends were really into. Halfway through though, it ditches that completely and just ends up being this huge ascending moment that just cascades and just takes you away. And from that moment, I think the album really defines itself. It's like, no, we're gonna have these huge, massive crescendos that you are gonna want to cry to. Insomnia is super blissful as well. Just the whole way through, I'm just transcending, really listening to his voice, the way it works with the instrumentation. Arrival as well is a mammoth track that the ending with the busyness and all of the music just coming together, it's such a yes moment. Like, it's so great to listen to, and I'm just so happy, and I feel like my life is just reaching new realms. It's just such a good feeling listening to this track, and the rest of the album really takes this to extra levels. I mean, Blossom has these softer tones to it at the beginning, but of course it builds up into a more mammoth-sized moment, just like, you know, a pretty standard sort of trope of the album where some tracks might start off a bit slower and then build, but it doesn't really get old, it doesn't really get boring, and there's some slight tiny tweaks that make the tracks feel a little bit interesting. Like, there might be something, like for example with the track Sketchbook, you know, there might be something a bit different. You know, the drums sound a bit heavier and a bit crunchier, and the rhythm of the track is just moving at a slightly more increased pace that just feels like you're getting a bit jerked about. And it's those kinds of little details and the attention to detail that Parannoul puts in these tracks that just makes each individual moment so good. And it's so memorable as well. Like, I feel like there's going to be so many times where I'm going on a late night walk, or perhaps maybe even in the summertime, where the sun is rising or the sun is setting, and I'm playing this album. I nearly just fell over. I don't know how I did that. I'm stood still. But yes, where you're just playing an album like this and it's just really taking you to new heights. And that's where I've always wanted shoegaze to fall into the category of. Like, I want it to make me feel that kind of way, and I want it to have that epic, grandiose feeling, and this album has that in spades. It's joyous, it's momentous at every turning point. It's so good. And I haven't even talked about what the best track is in my opinion. Parade. Best song on the album. So bloody good. Love this shit. Oh my god. If you have ever listened to Masakatsu Tagaki, and if you haven't, you should. Because if you haven't, firstly, you should, because he's amazing. And secondly, this point won't make sense if you've never listened to him. But you should. And anyway, the sort of like classical sounds that really drive the first section of this track really sound like his stuff, and it's so beautiful. It's so stunning to listen to, and it's just crazy to hear it in a like shoegaze type song. Never would I think I'd hear a song that reminds me of Masakatsu Tagaki in the shoegaze genre. And shout out to Connor for mentioning this as well. But the sort of like walrus heaviness that comes through in the track makes it sound like Masakatsu and Walrus collaborated on this track. And again, if you've never listened to Walrus, oh my god, you are missing out. They are like mountain-sized shoegaze music. It's absolutely sensational stuff, and some of the moments on this album where it gets really heavy, really intense, remind me of Walrus. An amazing band, but it's so magical sounding, this track. It sort of transpires into a more like emo anthem midway through, and the second half of the track sounds totally different to the first, but it's so good. It's a super long song that just hits that spot. It's fantastic. And yeah, from an album that is just filled with so much greatness, it's a great album, and it really goes to show that music, it does not slow down whatever month it is. I mean, we're getting brilliant albums coming out so early in the year from an artist that without really the internet would even be talked about by some guy from England, really. Like, imagine without the internet, who would discover this? How would we let artists gain this kind of hype? I mean, he's not massive, he's not chart topping, it's nothing like that. But the fact that, you know, an artist like this gets that platform and gets plenty of people across all different countries talking about them in an online capacity and impacting people the way that this album's impacting me is just so amazing. Like, you've got to say thank you, internet, sometimes, as boomer as I may sound saying that. 8.5 out of 10 from me. This is fantastic. This will easily be one of the best albums of the year by the end of the year for sure. I can see it. I'm guaranteeing it. It's so bloody good, and I'm super impressed with Parannoul, and I'm so happy that albums like this can just be stumbled upon at any given moment now, because goddamn, music is so good, and the internet gives you the opportunities to hear stuff like this. It's so good. What a world, what a day, what an absolute day we're in right now. And thank you for watching this review. Thank you as always. Please tell me your thoughts in the comments if you have heard it. If you've not heard it before, I'd love to see what you think, and well, check it out, and then I'd love to see what you think, and I'd love to see what you think if you have heard it too. Thank you as always. Do subscribe if you haven't already. Check out my Patreon, and goodbye.